day number 4, and we are excited to continue to discuss HBCUs football and media coverage. Today, we're going to look at where HBCUs as a whole can do better to attract those students, get that attention that they so richly deserve, to tell those stories that have changed thousands and thousands upon thousands of lives. First, if possible, if feasible, if legal, HBCUs pool their resources, assets, people, money to tell those stories that are consistent for those universities. For example, PV versus TSU, there are so many stories there, I'm absolutely certain of that. And the ability to tell those stories and reach to potential students, enormous. Or, and this will show up tomorrow, the story of the song Neck. How a student at Norfolk State University had an epiphany in 1984 to play this universal HBCU anthem in the Bay Area Classic, Norfolk State University versus Hampton. Seemingly small, but this song is played by everybody. And not just HBCUs, LSU, Ohio State. The song is huge. I never knew the song even existed as a pop tune, but it did. That's a wonderful story that I'm sure, when told well, is a way to really entice students into the fold. Secondly, students essentially are the priority of schools. Without students, there's no need for these institutions. Having students being able to see themselves, not just, oh, it's a student, but a student who's a first generation student, a student who is an LGBTQIA student, a student who is from a small country town, in the stories that the university tells to entice students, that is also key. We all know in marketing, people like to see themselves show up somewhere so they can more easily identify with the thing that you're trying to get them to buy or be a part of or be engaged with. So, not just having students, hey, we're doing this thing, but hey, I'm a student just like you. I attend this university. Here's my story, and here how this is how I succeed. This is how I achieve. This is how I move forward. This is how this institution is better in my life. More stories like that, kind of like Hillman, A Different World. So many kids decided to go to school because of that program. Granted, it was television, but we have an opportunity with so many media outlets to tell those same stories locally at the institution. Third, create and control the narrative. Any publicist will tell you, you got to create the story and control the story. If you let someone else create the story, you won't get your point across the way you need to get it across. So whether it's your universities or institutions credo is scholarship, achievement, or you're looking at graduation, when you create those stories, being able to control those stories because you are doing all of the creation is key. We see this show up in Formula One racing. Before Liberty took over Formula One, it was run by Bernie Ecclestone, and he saw Formula One as a place for rich men to watch cars go fast and drink champagne and have beautiful women. When Formula One was taken over by an equity group, that all shifted. Now Formula One creates oodles of content that they manage to tell the story of Formula One to increase viewership and involvement in one of the biggest sports in the world. The same can be said for HBCUs. Create those stories that are important to people, children, parents, alumni, depending on the narrative you're trying to tell, to get people more enticed and included in the going ons and the involvement and the sponsoring and the donor and the educating, being educated of the institution. Create, control, distribute your own narrative. Lastly, and this is the hardest part, funding. HBCUs are historically underfunded. And we're talking at the state house level. When you don't have HBCU alum or HBCU allies in the rooms that decide the budget, you take a hit. We see it here in the state of Texas. UT and A&M have a boatload of representation at the State House in Austin, and it shows up in their funding. It also shows up with their alumni, because their alumni run for office. Their alumni are major business owners who can influence representatives and senators. For HBCUs, that luxury doesn't always exist. So being creative with funding, such as partnering with businesses, that institution can show a long-term relationship with the student, not necessarily the institution, but with the students. For example, and I know this might be a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. Hear me out. So in Japan, students are taught early to clean up after themselves. It's a part of the curriculum. Just imagine. We're thinking outside the box here. With HBCUs, I'm not talking about cleaning up the dorms. However, doing things like creating planter boxes or gardens outside of the dorm rooms or in certain areas, instead of having the lawn service do it, have the students do it, but have it sponsored by Lowe's. Now, creating those memories and actually understanding how to create gardens, so when you graduate and you buy your own home, you can do your own thing, and Lowe's was always there with you. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's absolutely doable. The key is being creative in finding funding to help you afford to tell these stories, because I absolutely understand it's not free and it's not cheap, but it has to be done. The normal way, the usual way of going to the state, the needle gets pushed. It's not getting pushed fast enough, and it's not getting pushed far enough. So it's incumbent on university and institution leadership to find more creative ways to get the funding to help their institutions out as they move forward, and making those dollars stretch. And things like social media go so much further than just television used to, because students and their parents are on social media. Social media champions video. If you're creating videos that social media champions, that tell stories that kids want and need to hear to attend your university, you're that much further ahead. And the cool thing about social media, the stuff will always be there. You don't show a commercial once and it disappears, it's in the feed. So you get a kid attached to a storyline in a feed, you have a kid attached to university. Those are just some ideas. We're just tossing them out, but I think they're very concrete, very doable, executable ideas where we can see goals met. This is Emile Browne, Chief Visual Officer of ECVM, the best media company in the H. Looking forward to tomorrow. And tomorrow's going to be like a podcast, essentially. So you can turn the video off and just hear the sound tomorrow, because I'm going to tell you a story. So looking forward to talking to you tomorrow. Tune in tomorrow. Until then.